Hello, I am Loren Legarda. Welcome to the Vargas Museum and to the historic campus of the University of the Philippines in Diliman, Quezon City. Thank you for making the time today for a virtual tour of the main gallery of the museum. The Jorge B. Vargas Museum and Filipiniana Research Center opened its doors in 1987 after Mr. Vargas donated his vast collection to the university in 1978. Jorge Vargas was an important figure in the fields of politics and culture before and after the Pacific War, at the time of American colonial rule and the emergence of the Philippine Republic. Jorge Vargas was a man of wide interests. He was the executive secretary of the Commonwealth Government of Manuel Quezon in 1935. In 1941, he was the mayor of Greater Manila at the beginning of a Japanese occupation. A year later, he became the chairman of the Philippine Executive Commission and the first ambassador of the Philippines to Japan in 1943. He led the Philippine Amateur Athletic Federation and co-founded the Boy Scouts of the Philippines in the 30s, and was the first president of the Philippine Book Lovers Society in 1954. Mr. Vargas was drawn to the diverse materials of Philippine history and culture. He collected art, stamps, coins, books, periodicals, documents, photographs, and personal objects. What you will see today is a selection from his art collection, which includes paintings, drawings, and sculptures. The collection spans the late 19th century to the post-war period of the 1960s and tells a great story about art and society in Philippine history. Mr. Vargas called his family compound Kawilihan, or fascination, a fitting name for what had motivated him to gather objects of different kinds and share them for future generations through the museum. The exhibition is divided into 4 sections: light, province, unease, and passage. In each of these sections, we can see works of contemporary art and documents from the archives conversing with the pieces from the Vargas collection. This interaction paints a complex picture of the intersecting times and places that the collection and its experience elicit. A smaller exhibition can also be found within the exhibition. It is called Track Changes, which seeks to dialogue with the collection as it explores the works of Aurelio Alvero, who helped Mr. Vargas build and curate his collection, and Guillermo Tolentino, whose work introduces us to the world of the occult, the ancient syllabary, and allegorical sculpture. Let us now go to the first section called Light. The artworks we see here come from the pioneers of Philippine art, Juan Luna and Felix Resurrección Hidalgo, done in the waning years of the Spanish colonial period in the late 19th century. Light may mean 2 things. First, how the Filipino painters calibrated light as a material element in their paintings. And second, how a group of artists who belong to the Ilustrado, or literally the enlightened, lived and learned in Europe. A noteworthy piece in the collection is Primeras Letras, Learning to Read, by Simon Flores, a painting of a mother imparting to her child the first lessons in reading. He was the first Filipino of native origin to claim honors in an exhibition overseas, a silver medal at the 1876 Universal Exposition of Philadelphia. Observe the attention given to the textures of the house and the clothes. Across the work of the homegrown artist, Simon Flores, are two pieces by the academic painter Rafael Enriquez, Un Gitano Tocando la Guitarra, a gypsy playing the guitar, and Un Patio Andaluz, an Andalusian courtyard. A person of Spanish lineage in the Philippines, he founded the Escuela de Bellas Artes, which is now the College of Fine Arts of the University of the Philippines. Like Simon Flores, he patiently reveals the details of attire and milieu. The Penitent by Felix Resurrección Hidalgo portrays a man in distress. Only his face is illuminated, while the rest of the canvas is rendered in dark hues, and so heightening the emotional tone of the painting through chiaroscuro, or the interplay between shade and luminosity. In Conversation with the Penitent is a 2007 work, Anonymity, number 72, by Poklong Anading. It is part of his Anonymity series, a photography project where Anading takes photographs of people in the streets of the places he visits. Notice how the face is lit and yet obscured at the same time, a foil to the use of light in The Penitent. One of the large works in the collection is Picnic in Normandy, an undated work by Juan Luna. It is a painting of Europeans spending a day in the fields of the French countryside. In the foreground, women pick flowers. At the left side, a small group in a picnic, and at the back, a couple left to their affair. It is painted in the Impressionist style, marked by short and quick brushstrokes which keenly describe the effect of light on subjects and surfaces. The next section is Province. We are now moving to the time of America's colonization of the Philippines at the beginning of the 20th century. The landscape paintings of this period idealized the countryside. 4 canvases flesh out this temper. Pasig River Scene by Ramon Peralta, Canlaon Mountain by Maria Iglesias, and Imus Landscape and Countryside, both by Teodoro Buenaventura. Let us try to focus on another landscape painting, Riverview from Santa Ana by Fabian de la Rosa. It is a typical scene then in Manila. The Pasig River snakes along lush greenery, and in the distance is a cluster of houses, the lyrical image of which is reflected on the placid water. The skies are in soft pastels of blue and white, which convey a feeling of tranquility. Inspired by Fabian de la Rosa's nephew and student, Fernando Amorsolo, the picturesque became the mood of the time. The artist, who was to become the gentle master of the academy, was invested in the imagined simplicity and bounty of provincial life, as well as the humble everyday habits of the common folk. Sculptures are also part of the Vargas Collection. A beautiful example is Allegory of Temptation, an elegant interpretation of a biblical story in carefully carved wood by Graciano Nepomuceno, done in 1933. Let us now move to unease. The Americans established the Commonwealth in 1935. with Manuel Quezon at the helm and Jorge Vargas as his executive secretary. In shaping the colony in the image of America, the colonizers initiated reforms in politics, the economy, and culture. It was an effort to be disrupted by the Pacific War. At this point in time, Fernando Amorsolo was at the height of his career. Jorge Vargas was his patron. An attractive Amorsolo piece hangs in the main gallery titled Fishing Scene. Let's take a look at it. It is a large painting of a community of fisherfolk. In the background is a fishing boat and a number of people huddled around the day's catch, preparing them for transport using the horse-drawn carriage at the leftmost part of the painting. In the foreground are a man and a woman carrying a basket of their yield under a salmon sky. Another piece of Amorsolo titled Rice Planting stages a similar scene in the village, but this time celebrating the fertility of the soil and the joy of kinship. Both works render life around land and water with wistfulness and gratitude, animated by a distinct evocation of light that subjects substances to the conditions of the world and define them with romantic realism. In striking contrast to this optimism, the Vargas Collection offers up pieces on this horrible woman that arises from a war, like Dominador Castañeda's ravaged Manila, as well as San Sebastian Church through Quiapo ruins, ruins of the Manila Cathedral, and Rizal Avenue on fire, all by Fernando Amorsolo. They speak of terror and the corpses lying in its wake. To be felt at this time, too, was an increasing disparity between the social classes. Hernando Ocampo points to such a condition in his oil on canvas work, The Contrast. The acute light from a small kerosene lamp sculpts the presence of a scraggy man on his hunches, his hand touching mere morsels of food on his plate. A stark buildings hinting at progress loom behind him. The style is an index of a modernism sensitive to the disfiguration of form and society, and which veered away from the academic and popular styles cherished by Fernando Amorsolo and his faithful. The war deeply scarred so many lives, resulting in the displacement of persons and families. Such a situation of migration can be felt as we speak, as countless Filipinos seek better opportunities outside the country. The 2000 work Belonging in Transit by the artist couple Alfredo and Isabel Aquilizan refers to the strategy of survival. It is made up of miscellaneous items from the house that her family had packed when they moved to Australia, and now crammed in containers resembling the balikbayan or homecoming box. And now we are at the last section called Passage. The freedom the country gained after the Pacific War resonated in the art world. This period saw the rise of modernism, partly initiated by the artist Victorio Edades, whose modernist vision can be gleaned in his work Bulul at Babae. The painting presents a dark-skinned woman with a basket in her arm, looking at a bulul, a wooden figure that embodies spirits. The woman and the artifact are flanked by a stalk of bamboo and a banana leaf. The way the figures are rendered with marked flatness, distortion, and unmodulated color sharply departs from the more lyrical style of Fernando Amorsolo in his visual references. Another example of a shift in style and mindset in a painting is Tuba Drinkers by Vicente Manansala. It dwells on a scene of making and drinking tuba or coconut wine, achieved in a variant of cubism, in which the plane is fragmented into cube-like forms. The many vibrant colors and the tones created by the facets likewise suggest a festive mood among the figures in the work. In this time of tension, social critique was expressed. In the collection is a sculpture of Guillermo Tolentino titled Filipinas in Bondage, which depicts a nude female figure cast in bronze. She is bound, her face clearly in anguish. It is a moral tale of any oppressive condition everywhere, and the universal desire by women and her kind to be free for all time. From the early works of the late 19th century and through the 1960s, there is so much to treasure at the Vargas Museum main gallery, as it takes us to the urgent and enchanting world of art and history. We thank you for being with us in this virtual tour today, and we look forward to seeing you and your loved ones in person in the museum soon.